Hi, I'm Chris, and welcome back to my channel, All In Gambling Addiction and Recovery. Everything covered on this channel is totally dedicated to helping people recovering from a gambling addiction or in the midst of dealing with a very difficult gambling addiction across all walks. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about professional sports. Are they fixed? And specifically for the sports bettor, it causes a whole host of problems when you're dealing with the bets, the outcomes, and the mental process that you go through. And I'm going to be covering various games and things like that point out where we have a lot of head scratching issues that come up, a lot of office talk that happens when you have a Sunday night, Monday night football game that ends. You have an NBA Finals. You have a World Series. And inevitably, what happens? You're like, what the heck was that call? Man, did you see the call at the end of that game? It always happens, right? What was that about? Half the time, you don't even talk about the ending of the game. You're actually talking about a bad call by what? A referee, an umpire, something that shaped the outcome of the game. Well, that's amplified for a compulsive gambler that bets on sports, because there might be a person that's laughing in the room and in the back of their head maybe had a lot of money riding on that game. And so that's what I really want to get into. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. When I first started betting, that's what I bet on, was sports. And throughout much of my gambling for the last 18 years, thankfully most of that time was gambling free, but each of my relapses, nearly all of it was on sports betting. So, with the NFL playoffs, with games like the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers in Week 18, with the field goal with 1 second left that went from 16-0 to 16-3 that caused a 13.5 spread and people screaming all over the place, I'm like, what better time to cover this topic of professional sports? Is it fixed? So right before we get into it, as always, all the information shared in this video is from personal experience and opinion. The main goal is to help compulsive gamblers in their recovery. I'm going to look down. I spent a lot of time researching this material going into today, so I'm going to have a lot of notes. Just like yesterday's video, I'm going to put some stuff in the comments section, but I'm going to get into it. NFL season, I'm going to start there with the NFL. We're going to talk about a little bit of the NBA. But, just looking at the games over the weekend, look, I'm going to self-identify myself. For you guys getting to know me, you'll get to know me through the videos. First and foremost, I'm a 30-year Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Since 1995, the first game that I saw them against the Washington Redskins, now Washington Commanders. Mark Brunell is their quarterback, first year in the league. I've loved and loved them, and they broke my heart. They broke my heart over the weekend. I truly, as a 30-year fan, thought that they were going to make the Super Bowl. And I fooled myself. They ran into Josh Allen. They looked like the better team. They broke my heart. So, yes, I'm going to self-identify as I am a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. They did break my heart. But I do want to start with the NFL playoffs. A lot of money, was thrown into the NFL playoffs. But just from the get-go, when it comes to sports betting, you can't avoid what is the obvious all the way through the NFL season. Whether you have Hulu, whether you got, if you're watching a game on Amazon Prime, whether you're just on, some of your local channels, if you're getting it, they almost make you watch it on 28 different networks now to catch all the games. But however you're watching it, when it comes to commercial time, what are you seeing? As soon as the commercial's up, it's a FanDuel, it's a DraftKings, it is something related to betting. And they even on a lot of these games, when it comes to the primetime games like Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, they got live lines rolling up. It's everywhere. $5 for that first bet. $5 to what? Win $200. Easy as can be. They don't want to give away $200 if they don't know they're getting it back at all of these places. And they run ad after ad after ad after ad. And they do it for a good reason, right? So I'm going to throw a ton of stats and a lot of numbers. If you love numbers, you love stats, this is the perfect video for you. So let's get to it. Total online sports betting wagers in the United States just last year was over $150 billion with a B, billion dollars. $150 billion was wagered in 2025. Just in the United States alone. That is only online. That is not people going to Vegas. That is not people going to Atlantic City. That is not people going to their local casinos that have sports books and wagering. That is just online, $150 billion. Going to places like Caesars that has an online sports book, and DraftKings and FanDuel and all of the other sports books, which are, probably near 100 at this point that are out there and available depending on your state. $150 billion. What I did is I took a look at some games that stood out to me that I believe were noticeable, because I text my friends. I'm now at a point. My last bet was November of 2024, so I'm at a point of 14 months clean. And when I was at my last relapse, truthfully, I felt in my mind that there's a lot of fixed games out there. There are games that early on, when you start seeing the flags fly, something's up. And I felt that when I was betting. I would look for lines, I would look for movement, I would look for things when I was betting those games to actually try to find the potential games that looked off to me, because I would do live betting. So there's going to be a lot of education throughout this video. I'm not trying to do this to educate to get people to bet, but I'm just educating to get people. If you're on here and you're following this channel and you're someone that does, casinos or Keno, scratch-offs, other things, just to understand, because they're all the same. If you have a gambling issue, it's all the same. You cannot quit. But for a sports bettor, what this world actually looks like, for me, I was trying to find any way possible. You're trying to find an edge. And for me, I was trying to find the games that I thought were potentially fixed, that had something off. So I'm going to read off a couple games that I noticed, now not gambling, that looked off to me for this year. Starting with the first, October the 5th, 2025. The first game that New England played Buffalo at Buffalo. This is before anyone thought New England was any good. They were 2-3. Buffalo was 4-1 at Buffalo. The Bills were favored by 8.5 points when that game started, which means, if you're a sports bettor, that means that Buffalo had to win by 9 or more points if you're going to pick them to win. That's called the spread, on the spread of the game. You could pick Buffalo on the money line. 90+% of bets were on Buffalo to just win that game outright, which meant it doesn't matter if they win by 1 point as long as they win the game. On the money line, the money was on Buffalo. Now, a term that you're going to learn tonight is there's something called sharp bets. Sharp bets are for people that bet a lot of money. That's you'll hear things like the heavy crime, the gambling families, the heavy, heavy investors and some of the things that you hear behind the scenes were the heavy bettors. These are the big time dollars. So to give you just a little reference as far as bets, this is a world that I came from. So there's a nickel bet. A nickel bet is a $500 bet. A dime bet is a $1,000 bet per game. Now you start getting into the big boy dollars. When they're talking a sharp bet, a stick, if someone's putting a stick bet, that's $100,000 on a single game or a parlay. Or finally, a balloon. A balloon is $1 million bet on a game. You can watch this and say it doesn't happen. It absolutely happens. Happens all over the place. There are people moving that kind of dollars on individual games, and these are called sharp bets. The general public was putting a lot of money on the Bills to win the game outright, but not the sharp bettors. The sharp bettors were looking at New England. But guess what happened in that game? Buffalo had 11 penalties for 90 yards in that game. And not just any penalties. They had key penalties in that game. That was one of those games when I'm watching it. Buffalo at home, tough to beat. It was a Sunday night football game. 11 penalties, and they were key penalties. They lost that game 23-20. So 90% of bets that the regular public made were all losers. They were all losers. Every single one of them losers because New England won that game. You will notice during the course of that game some key flags that were thrown. New England won it outright. Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, Josh Allen lost. Very next night, I told you I was a Jags fan. Jacksonville, Monday Night Football versus the Chiefs. A lot of people love to say Chiefs always get the calls, right? Not that night. Jacksonville versus the Chiefs. The public had 71% of bets on the Chiefs on the money line. 71% of bets on the Chiefs, not the sharp bettors. The sharp bettors, the big-time money, $100,000, $1 million plus bets, were on the Jaguars. Guess what happened that night? The Chiefs had 13 penalties for 109 yards. You know how many the Jags had? They had 4 for 25 yards. 13 penalties on the Chiefs, 109 yards. Jaguars 4 for 25. Jags win that game. I'm thrilled as a Jags fan. That was an awesome game to watch. Trevor diving across the goal line on his birthday. Chiefs totally outscored us. They outran us. They outpassed us. They had way more yards than us. There was no way they were winning that game. Sharp bettors knew it. But just 6 days later, after the Chiefs racked up 13 penalties for 109 yards, came Sunday Night Football. The Lions versus those same Chiefs that could not get out of their way with 13 penalties. Lions versus the Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 2.5 points. The public, 81% of general bets were on the Lions to cover that spread. They're saying the Lions were going to cover it because at the time, the Lions were 4-1, and the Chiefs had a losing record. 81% on the Lions. Sharp bettors, though. Guess who they picked? Chiefs. Lions had 4 penalties, but no bigger penalty than on the very first drive when they marched down that field. 4th and goal on the 1. They actually go to David Montgomery for a pass, and he throws it over to Jared Goff. Touchdown. Random flag goes out. Illegal shift on Jared Goff. It looked clean from the way I looked. You can look at that play over and over. Illegal shift, Jared Goff. They called it back. They had to do a field goal. Guess how many penalties the Chiefs had that game? 0. After 13 for 109 yards on Monday, 6 days later, they were flawless. 0 penalties for 0 yards. Chiefs won that game. I think, what was it, 37-20? They won it easily, 31-20. You can look at that score. They covered 3 of those games that you can call out. You can go on and on. You go into the playoffs, what the heck happened to the Packers up 21-3, suddenly 25 points by the Bears in the fourth quarter. Awesome comeback, but what the heck happened? The Rams, that game against Carolina, that was a wild back and forth. What the heck happened? If you're a sports bettor, you're sick to your stomach, and I've been there. You're sick to the stomach the whole weekend. If you want to delve even further and crazier into this, I'm just going to throw this out there because I am. If you've ever followed, there was a recent series of events where there was theft happening to some of the big-time players. Joe Burrow had a couple $1 million of stuff taken from his house, jewelry, watches, stuff like that, to the tune of a couple million. It happened when he was playing a Monday Night Football game against the Cowboys on 12-9 of 24. It just so happens on 12-1 of 24, the Bengals failed to cover a big bet that the sharp bettors had taken on the Bengals, as well as that night against the Cowboys that the Bengals did not. They covered, and the sharp bettors had taken the Cowboys. And that night, Joe Burrow had a lot of money taken from his house. Same thing happened just a couple months earlier to Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That's kind of far in the realm out there, but you'll actually see if you look up a lot of professional athletes. There was a stretch where it was Luka Doncic, it was Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Shedeur Sanders has had stuff taken from his home, Joe Burrow. It's interesting to me that all that got kind of taken back. It was all part of this Chilean crime group. But if you look at the week prior specific to like Mahomes and Joe Burrow, it just so happened that the week prior, sharp bettors lost on their picks on their games. That's kind of more just one of the conspiracy theory. I just thought I'd throw that out there. Now, I got some homework for you guys. If you have Netflix, two things you should really watch. Delving out of football a little bit into the NBA. NBA is one that, look, it's out. They've been outed twice now. First with Tim Donaghy. Tim Donaghy was the first referee, that they found was betting on his games. They actually have a documentary. I would encourage anyone watching this to look at the documentary on Tim Donaghy. It is called Untold Operation Flagrant Foul. Untold Operation Flagrant Foul. It's the Tim Donaghy story. NBA referee, many years. And he went from, as an NBA referee, making great, pretty good money as a referee, to, running, kind of working with a couple guys. And he's shared in this documentary on Netflix, he had the ability to move the point spread on any given night for an NBA game by 6 points in either direction by calls that he made. 6 points. So just picture any game, any teams, any game. Boston versus LA, 6 points in any direction. That's a big deal. Tim Donaghy's story. He got busted. He got arrested. He said in that documentary that of the 60 NBA referees that he was working with, 52 of the referees were gambling on the games. 52 out of 60. He was the only one that got busted. It is a very interesting documentary. But now you've got this year, of course, the whole Chauncey Billups, a couple NBA players getting tied up in it. It's ugly. I'm bringing this up to say there's so much ugliness. You would love the purity of the sport, but there's a lot of ugliness tied to it, unfortunately. And I don't believe, really, it's from the players. The players, in nearly all cases of this, want to play the game. They want to play it well. They're the superstars. But the referees are where it's tough. You see in some cases, just like in the NBA, you have some coaches, you have some players a part of it. But where you have big time, these sharp bettors, and you have some of the big organizations out there that pump big money into betting, if they can get their hands on someone like a referee or a coach or their highest prize, if they can get their hands on a player, it's a big time deal. So your second watch would be, it's called Bad Sport. It's also on Netflix. It's called Bad Sport Hoop Schemes. And this is the really sad story of a basketball player called Stephen Headache Smith. Headache was his nickname. Basketball player for Arizona State back in the 90s. Full of potential, was going to be drafted in the NBA. Shaving points. Got caught up in it. It is actually, for sports bettors, to me, it's a must watch, because you will see the whole thing play out. What it is like for a bettor trying to place bets, what it was like for the player himself going through it and shaving points. You'll see the whole thing. I would encourage people that don't even understand sports betting, because it helps you understand that process, what it's like. And in both cases with Tim Donaghy and this Bad Sport Hoop Schemes with Stephen Smith, it turned out in disaster for both of them. Complete disaster. Stephen Smith lost his NBA career, and Tim Donaghy lost his referee career, both over very small sums of money in the end. It was greed, but it was small sums of money, and they lost their integrity, the integrity of the game, over nothing. It was sad stories. I'll put these in the post, but this is both on Netflix. But it brings me to, when it comes to, just my final point that I kind of want to make of things is just questioning the referees. And looking at Tim Donaghy, when he shared 52 out of 60 officials were gambling on games, that's kind of the big piece. I can't really believe, in many cases, I don't see the athletes. They want to win. You see it in the press conferences, they want to win. The referees are kind of the question mark. So what I did is I looked up low, midpoint, and top salaries of officials in a lot of the key sports that we watch. And I want to share that with you. So starting at the top, here's your top paid ones. NBA referees. Low point salary for some of the entry-level referees in the NBA, $250,000. midpoint 375,000. Your high-end referees, if they get invited to do the playoffs and things like that, 500,000. They have a longer season, 81 games, longer season, still good. 500,000. Major league officials, major league umpires, low point 200,000, midpoint 300,000, high end 400,000 a year. English Premier League, I like to talk about soccer. English Premier League, low point for officials 210,000, midpoint 260,000 a year, high end for those referees 310,000. NFL referees, low end NFL referees 150,000 a year, midpoint 200,000 a year, high end 250,000 a year. Now, when you think about that, yes, those are great salaries. But suppose someone comes up to you, like in the case of Tim Donaghy, someone came up to him and offered him a lot more than his salary for inside information that he had about games. Because these officials, before games start, they know changes in lineups. NFL referees, they know if Patrick Mahomes is injured before a game. They know if a running back or a key wide receiver is injured before a game, which can change a spread. They knew on week 18, like specific, you want to go back to the Packers and the Vikings, that line started at 6.5 for the spread. But those referees, they knew probably beforehand, they knew before those lines, well before they changed, likely, that the Packers were going to sit their starters. But they know definitely specific to game time for all the fantasy junkies out there that are holding their breath on Sunday at 12:57 of what's going on with their starters for the 1 o'clock games. These referees know well before then what's going on with guys. And if they've got, what they do is they work through multiple layers. If they are part of anything, they'll work through this guy to this guy to this guy. If they know a key player is going to be out, that can greatly affect the outcome of a game. If you know, if it's the NFL, if you know a starting quarterback specifically, or running back or key wide receivers out of the game, that can greatly affect things. Umpires. Umpires are highly scrutinized in Major League Baseball. How many times are they looking at the strike zone and what's going on? They're talking about replacing them possibly even with just an electronic strike zone or something different to call the strikes. They miss a lot, and that can change the outcomes of the game, definitely with umpires. And I'm telling you, 200 to 400,000, they're doing 162 games. That's a lot. Imagine a few calls that they don't make the strike or whatever. That can change the outcome of what's going on with, whether a hit happens or a guy gets walked or something like that. English Premier League. I can tell you in my career, I bet on a lot of soccer. And how many times in the 85th minute or even the 90th minute and beyond that it might be, let's just say, a 2-1 game, and suddenly those guys are all rushing down the box. The team that's down by a goal is rushing down the box. They're kicking it. They're hitting a cross into the box, and some guy goes down. And that referee decides to blow a whistle, points into the center box, and calls for a trip and says it's a penalty kick for the other team. Those guys only make $210 to $310 a year. There's a lot of influence in there. Could there be something going on with officials there? Possibly. And then, the NBA that has been exposed, we've already talked about that. The other piece that, that I have seen is the players themselves in sports, like lower level sports like tennis. It is less likely to see someone like a basketball player or something like that. You'll see it in this bad sport, the hoop schemes with the player from Arizona State, but you're more likely to see a player actually throw a game in mid-level tennis matches. That would be a place. As I did my research, look, you're not talking about your top players. Back in the day, your Roger Federers and your Nadals and your Djokovic on the male side, your Serena Williams, Venus Williams, your high-end players on the women's side. I don't know the names as well right now. Sinner. There you go. You got one name on the news side. But anyway, the names that aren't in the top that are making the millions on the tennis side, like the names that are like, say, 100 to 200 to 300, top 100 to 300 in both the men's and women's side in tennis, those people make like 75,000 to 200,000 a year playing tennis. And they're not all on the men's or women's professional tour. Some of them are on secondary tours, challenger tours, things like that. How do I know that? I bet on them. And you can watch them live. And you better believe that those people can have influence, because I have watched matches where a much better tennis player will beat someone in the first set 6-0 or 6-1, and then in the second set lose it 1-6 or 2-6, and then lose the third set. And it's like this massive turnaround. Like, I mean, they crushed them. Like, I mean, just smash the person in the first set and then just totally turn around and then lose it. And it's this seesaw thing that just doesn't make sense. The only thing that would make sense is there's some influence going on in that match. Anyway, I've said enough on this. I've said a lot just because I know a lot in this area. But all this to say, there's so many headwinds just in general if you want to place a bet on sports. Trying to factor in a spread, all the factors involved, aside from the factors of there's some legitimate concern in reality of, are the games fixed or not? The NBA is a fact. It's a fact with Tim Donaghy that he was involved. He faced prison time for it. He said 52 out of 60 other officials were involved. It's a fact that for a second time it's happened. Chauncey Billups was involved with it as a coach. Players were involved. It's a fact. It is a fact that in the Tim Donaghy story, he stated that it is an entertainment business. And I heard Mike Tomlin, former coach of the Steelers as of this week, stated that it is the entertainment business. And that is all sports. It is an entertainment business. And Donaghy said in his story that superstars get special treatment. And that's a fact. Superstars do get special treatment. I wear my Trevor Lawrence jersey. All the superstars that we wear jerseys for get special treatments in games, but not everybody gets that special treatment. You see your guy go down trying to catch a pass, he might get that flag thrown. A lesser guy may not. Those flags can influence the outcome of a game, and we all know it. Just like a holding call can. Just like that grab at the end of the Chiefs and the Eagles a couple Super Bowls ago that influenced the end of that Super Bowl. All these questions that float, all of it, and my main message at the end of my very long video is to say, is it really worth it? Why are we doing? If you're a sports bettor watching this, and as I have struggled for so many years, I went almost 10 years gambling free, and after a series of relapses, now have 14 months clean. Is it really worth it? You can watch game after game after game. If you're a college kid on campus thinking you're the greatest bookie ever, and you're going through this, is it really worth it? Knowing the possibility, aside from the possibility of fixed games, the level of addiction that is there. There's never going to be enough winning to ever make it worth it, number one. And the best sports bettors out there, the professional sports bettors that are considered the elite professional gamblers, get 55% of their bets correct. The only person that does better than those sports bettors was Tim Donaghy, because he had the inside fix. He got 79% of his bets right because he was a part of it. For all the rest of us, you're going to be below 50%, which means your number's going to be 0 before you're all said and done, especially if you're a compulsive gambler. So your goal is to go back and look at my video from yesterday, which is not so good because I wasn't looking in the camera, and I apologize for that. I'm trying to do better at that today. But your goal is to look at my video from yesterday and realize there's a lot more life to be living than living and looking at your phone and hoping that pass interference call or that last second shot goes in, because at some point that shot's not going to go in, that call's not going to go your way. And there's a lot more beauty in this life than waiting on that call. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. Stay strong, win the day, like or subscribe. I'll keep making more videos. Thank you.